Today from Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, that opened its doors in 1985 to educate students who learn differently. At first, the college had fewer than 80 students. Today, we have over 450. Kathy D'Alessio and Dottie Osterholt are founding faculty members who worked to open our doors in 1985. This was before the American with Disabilities Act was in place to ensure equal access to students. Kathy D'Alessio and Dottie Osterholt are here today to tell their story of the beginnings of this institution.
Kathy, it's really a pleasure to sit down and talk to you about the beginnings of Landmark. Now that we're in the
Dottie. Thank
31st year
Yeah.
of the institution.
It's a real privilege, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I think when I think back that at the beginning of the institution, I reflect about why I even came here in the first place. And I think it was a time in history when students had such limited access to college. And if they got in, they had even more limitations to support and real meaningful support. So I think I was interested in coming to work here to further that progress that I think we have gained quite a bit since then. Why did you come?
I came for very similar reasons. I had been a middle school teacher working in a resource room back at that time, and a single mother of a 2-year-old. And the prospect, when I had learned about Landmark College opening in Putney, Vermont, the prospect of working at the college level with students was something that was extraordinary. It was new. It was different. We were blazing the path for this kind of thing. And so that's what brought me here. I was very excited about that. And to be at the forefront of that endeavor was just amazing.
Blazing that trail. I mean, when you said that, the image that came so vividly to my mind was seeking textbooks that were not written for adults with disabilities and trying to find texts that didn't have cartoons or first grade pictures in them, and the hours that we spent in that process that first semester before we opened. It was just amazing. What do you remember about the Landmark community, the initial Landmark community?
So the initial Landmark community, we were a small group of faculty, 30 some odd.
I don't read.
It was quite a number. It was that 3 to 1 ratio. So students under the population of under 80 students, there were a number of us. I remember us being a very young and hip and fun, intelligent, creative group of professionals who just couldn't do enough for our students. We were not only in the classroom, but we were also in the tutorial. We were hanging doors, in the dining hall to get students ready to come here. We were planting flowers. We were having students over our homes for dinner. We were doing social things, activities, recreational activities, athletic activities with them outside of the classroom. I remember us meeting every day at 10 o'clock in the morning. The entire faculty met in one room, and we discussed how things were going. We brought up students who were struggling, students that were doing well. It was a cohesive, collaborative, just fantastic group of young professionals.
That is my memory as well, for sure. And I guess when it came to teaching and teaching our students at this age, we had no template to follow. So I think my initial response is that we were such a nimble group of educators ready to sort of meet the needs of this diverse population at that time.
Absolutely. And having worked in the public sector for a number of years before coming to Landmark, it was unusual for professionals, teachers, to be sharing materials, to be talking about how we do things, to be sharing teaching methods. That was just you kind of were in your own little place in public school, and here it was just the opposite, where we would just joyfully share things and work collaboratively together.
I think it was even a great need in order to meet the needs of the students to be constantly collaborating on different approaches that students would benefit from and just trying anything and everything that worked. And we found some great success together, I think, in that process.
The creativity was outstanding.
Yeah, I agree. What would you hope that Landmark College would become in the future back then?
I wanted it to grow. continue to grow, and I wanted it to be accessible to many different socioeconomic groups of people. We've always been a pretty expensive school, and even back in 1985, we were rather pricey. And so I think my hope at that time was for Landmark to grow and to serve more students who weren't necessarily always financially able to do so. And looking at what we have available today for financial aid and scholarships and money for students in that category, it's really, I think some of those hopes have come to fruition.
I think that was a shared interest of mine as well. It was heartbreaking to see students not able to come to Landmark and take advantage of the atmosphere and the education we had to provide those students because of the price. And certainly before we got the first accreditation, that was the door was closed to many, many students because of that. What's your happiest memory here?
I don't know if it's any one particular memory that stands out. I think I have the privilege of happy moments occurring several times within a year. And those times are honestly during graduation. When I see students, I'm really surprised at how this is really bringing up some emotion here. It's really interesting. When I see my students, walk across the stage and say their little speeches, those are happy moments.
I would echo that, and certainly when watching the first graduates cross that stage was an incredible moment because it really reflected so much hard work.
And Sandro Rotella, you remember Sandro? He was my first graduate, so there's a happy moment that's right there. Yeah.
That's right, and because we knew all the students at that point, they were our students, and it was a collective effort to get them to that point, for sure. As Landmark has evolved, what do you feel proud about in terms of maybe a personal contribution or just in general? What do you look at the college now and say, that's really good?
I've done a lot of things while I've been at Landmark. I've been in administration. I have been in supervision. I've been in the classroom, in tutorials, advising for many, many years. I've contributed in service to this college in many different ways and in different areas. I've produced lots of scholarship here. So those are things that I've done. But what makes me, I think, the proudest is really when I'm sitting across from a student in my office and I'm talking with them one-on-one and helping them to emerge as young adults. That to me is where the crux of the meaningfulness and the purpose of why I do this, why I've done it for so long. And when those students come back after years of not being here and they keep in touch with me and they have moved on, they're married and they have children, those are moments of wow, this has really been quite a journey.
Having those alumni come back and talk about their success stories is just amazing. And the fact that when I first started here and I would go out into the wider world and attend conferences, I was doing a lot of educating about what Landmark is and what our job was and who our students are. And now when I go to those conferences, they know Landmark. And that to me feels like we really have a place in this society, and it's just really rewarding. And a lot of people seek us out when they're looking for ways to teach students to learn differently. In education, there seems to be this sort of assumption that teaching isn't really rewarding unless you see those mini miracles. And in some sense, miracles could be the big things, miracles could be the little things. But can you cite any miracles that you think of in the past 31 years? Or just one example?
The miracle that comes to mind when you say that is a young woman that I worked with a few years ago who, from the moment I met her, she cried. She just was weeping constantly. During our orientation, she just wept. Whenever she came into my office, she wept. She would always be incredibly unsure of herself. She really lacked that self-confidence and that self-efficacy and self-esteem, self-advocacy, all the selves that we teach here at Landmark. And so I knew that when she entered my office, I would have the tissues available for her because she'd be crying. And she made it to graduation. She made it to graduation, and she got up and wept while telling her speech. And today she is a successful woman, and so that to me is like this just one of many, many miracles. But this young woman stands out in my mind as someone who really worked hard to overcome a lot of those self-deprecating, that concept that she had of herself to become such a empowered young woman.
That's a real tale of reframing that we work
absolutely. And
so
that's
hard
the term
on.
Terms that we use here,
right?
To reframe.
Yeah, exactly. And I think many of our students have to go through that process before they can even begin to learn and to grow academically and other ways as well. I think one thing that came to light for me just recently at a faculty meeting, one of the things that I do in my classes is try to help them understand that the first step is to kind of understand who they are as individual students and how they learn. But then the next and probably the most important lasting process is to be able to educate others about their learning difference and to be able to tell the world how individuals with learning differences are different. And as the conversation in this meeting was going on, it finally stopped at the point where someone said, well, it's really clear in this institution that if you meet one student with a learning disabilities, you have only met one student with a learning disabilities.
So
and
true.
That said everything.
That's right. And that's how we meet each student. That's how we work with each student.
Yeah.
We never categorize and never put student in a box, because what each student is capable of is overwhelming, truly.
Right. Well, this has been great.
Thank you,
to
Dottie.
sit down
it's been
together.
Wonderful to reminisce.
Great.
Here's to another 30 years.
Here's to another.